From the Reynolds Journalism Institute at the University of Missouri, welcome to Global Journalist. I'm Jason McClure. For 2.5 months in 2014, Hong Kong was a sea of yellow umbrellas. These umbrella revolution protesters were demanding true democracy in the election for the city's leader, called the chief executive. Tens of thousands of people took to the streets in Hong Kong's central business district, calling for the resignation of the current chief executive, C.Y. Leung, a man handpicked by communist authorities in Beijing. While the demonstrations were largely peaceful, police tried to break up the movement by firing tear gas and pepper spray into the crowds. The protesters, many of them teenagers and other young people, tried to protect themselves with umbrellas. On this edition of Global Journalist, I'll look at the protests a year later and how things have and haven't changed in Hong Kong as a result. At the time, Joshua Wong was an 18-year-old student. He's the founder of the pro-democracy group Scholarism. He's now studying at the Open University in Hong Kong, where he's taking a break from exams to speak with us. Joshua Wong, thanks so much for joining us on Global Journalist.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Joshua, it's been just over a year since the end of the Umbrella Revolution protests. I understand that you are facing some legal repercussions for your involvement in those. Tell us just a little bit about the status of your trial.
I've been charged by inciting unauthorized assembly, contempt of court, and obstruct a police officer. And actually, I need to face the trial next February, continue for more than 2 weeks, and the maximum penalty may be put in the prison for maximum for 5 years. So it's not really an easy time for me and some of my peers.
And you said it's you and a number of other leaders are facing trial on this, and you could face jail, being jailed for up to 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, one really interesting aspect of the mass protests last year was how young people were really in the vanguard, demanding change, providing a lot of leadership. What's the mood on campus right now where you are?
Of course, compared to the situation or momentum last year, actually, last year we get the best momentum, more of the new generation. I mean, the students have raised the political awareness. But of course, we can't get any positive result during the umbrella movement. But after the movement now, a lot of students still join into different activist groups and organizing various campaigns to continue to fight for freedom, democracy, human rights, this kind of universal value. So we are still persisting on our road until we get what we want to decide our future.
Now, during the protests and afterwards, pro-Beijing, pro-communist people in Hong Kong on the mainland, they accused you of being sort of a puppet of the United States, of the United Kingdom, yet you've remained quite critical of the British Prime Minister David Cameron, of President Obama. Tell us why.
It's really ironic that the pro-Beijing newspaper in Hong Kong criticized to claim that Joshua Wong is the CIA agent or have received the U.S. military training. It's ridiculous at all. But what I expect is, I think that actually why Hong Kong now is different with mainland China is all because of the joint declaration signed by China and UK government in 1984 to ensure Hong Kong to adopt rule of law and approximation of freedom and democracy. So if we observe that the Communist Party of China have broke the promise in the joint declaration, of course, UK government bear the responsibility to voice out and criticize the ignorance of Communist Party towards the joint declaration.
Well, looking back now on the events of the last year, what would you say the biggest challenge for the protesters was?
I think the biggest challenge is what we hope to do is to create a miracle or legacy. Because in the past of history, none of the city can achieve democracy or universal suffrage under the rule of Communist Party. Even we have mobilized more than 200,000 people to occupy and nearly 1 million of Hong Kongers joined into the movement. But the fact is our bargaining power is still not enough for us to get what we want. So I would like to admit that fight for democracy towards Communist Party of China is really a long-term battle for us. Even we can't win in last year battle, but I still think that in the future we can win in the war.
So you don't see that the protests last year were a failure? They haven't been a setback then, in other words?
Of course, I have already admitted that we can't get any positive result, but actually now the new generation is still planning to gather the power from the institution, from the street to the institution. And what I'm thinking is I'm planning to apply for judicial review and maybe next year run in the election. And what I hope to do is to bring the voice of the civil society into the institution to enhance the bargaining power of the new generation in the politics aspect.
And where do you see Hong Kong being 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Obviously, you'd like to be in politics then.
Yeah, of course, compared to the situation 5 years ago, I can't imagine that I will stand in the front line and continue to fight for democracy and even become appear in Time magazine cover. All of the things is out of my expectation. But I still admit that I will still commit on the movement because I believe I'm a Hong Konger. I'm born in Hong Kong, I live in Hong Kong, and I love Hong Kong. That's why even I think it's really a hard time for me. What I mean is facing the unreasonable political prosecution, or actually there's still a lot of the suppressed by the Communist Party and Hong Kong. But because Hong Kong is already the place that still have approximation of freedom of speech and human rights with the importance exist of judicial review. That's why I'm still ready and able to continue to commit on the democracy movement.
Joshua Wong, thanks so much for coming on Global Journalist.